this last week, obviously many of us have heard the salutation, if you will. Happy New Year. This new year, it's an expression of a recognition of a time, a start, something to come. In other words, something that hasn't yet been used, right? Something that has not been discovered, something that has not been experienced. So when we hear the word new, we consider this word and we think, well, where do we start? Where is our focus? How do we get there? How do we come to understand not only the emotional side of that, the happy, but how do we experience the new? Attitude, outlook, fresh, better. In other words, different than before. How do we get there? Where do we put the emphasis at on that? Not the old year, but the new. Not the old me, but the new. This is the picture that we attempted to paint last week as we were finishing up our time in 2023, and we were looking at the beautiful gift of salvation that we've been given. But if we'll determine as we're stepping into this new realm, if we'll determine as we're stepping into this new year that we're going to live for God, if we will determine that we are going to take a new direction, that is indeed where we desire to go, how do we get there? How do we get there? Because the reality of life, the challenge of life is that along that journey, there's some things that's going to pop up. There's some challenges that are going to come along the way, some roadblocks, if you will, some speed bumps, some opinions. We all hear those whether we want to or not, right? They just seem to kind of pour out. All of these things can get in the way when new becomes our focus, because it allows us to look over here and look over there, and we're not really sure. While there's some things, obviously, that happen in life that are outside of our control, what I want us to understand is that we have been equipped. We have been given, if you will, in some type of manner, an off button. So here's my question today as we begin to look at this letter from Paul. Where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? Where do we say no? Where do we say, I'm not going there? Where do we say that doesn't please God? I'm not going to have that in my life, even in my pursuit of new. In this text for today, we see Paul's giving some very, very clear instructions about line drawing, if you will. When we look at this passage, we read something beautiful here. It says, everything is permissible for me. Wait a minute. What are you saying, Pastor? I can do whatever I want? Yeah, we can. Well, I like that. That's exciting. I'm all in. Oh boy, that's awesome. But, and then what do we think? Oh man, I knew it was too good to be true. I knew that was coming, right? Because but changes the course of the conversation. But Paul says, you can do whatever you want. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So in other words, not all things help. Can we agree with that this morning? I can do whatever I want to do, but not all of it is good for me. Okay? We can look at that in a multitude of different examples. So where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? I can do whatever I want to do, anything I want to, but that's not always good for me. Can we agree with that? That's not an outlandish statement. That's not out there, off kind of weird thing. Because we have to look at it from all different perspectives. What about activities? I can drink and drive. But then there's the ticket, or there's the accident, or there's jail. I mean, what do I do? That line should actually be easy. Because that not only is a moral and ethical thing, but that line should be easy, right? Because that's going to bring me much more harm and much more aggravation than it's ever going to derive pleasure or good, right? So things like that should be easy. But what about, well, no one saw me when I left Walmart yesterday with that can of beans that I forgot to scan at the self-checkout gimmick. It happens. It happens. Nobody saw it, though. The door buzzer didn't go off, so who cares? Walmart makes a fortune. They ain't going to miss that 79-cent can of great value green beans, are they? It's not a big deal. So I'm just going to go home. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Because how does this grow my relationship with God? How does this strengthen my witness? I don't say this to create guilt. I don't say this but to realize while we can do all things are permissible. We can cuss like a sailor. We can go to every honky-tonk in town. We can run around on our spouses. We can lie. We can cheat. We can steal. We can do everything else. But what we have to ask is, what is the benefit? What is the benefit? Paul is saying here, I want you to be mindful. This is not about scolding or guilting, but does it bring benefit? Does it last more than a few seconds? Others may not know. The buzzer may not go off on the door, but God knows. God knows. And if we're entering into a new year with a new mindset, a new direction, I want a better life, if we realize and accept and believe that we represent Him, then what we have to understand, friends, is our lives, both the visible and the private, they matter. They matter. And there is where a line must be drawn in order to create a new life. It is absolute. It has to be. And this is all Paul is trying to get the church to understand. He's speaking to the believer here. He's saying there's got to be a place to where we say, okay, that's where the line is. We don't cross that. We're not going to do that. But all things are permissible. All things are lawful. All things, I can do whatever I want, right? Yes. We've all known that our whole lives. But what Paul is saying is stop and think for a moment that not all things are helpful. That is very important as we move forward in this new year. Paul continues, he says, everything is permissible to me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Now think about that for a moment. How easy is it to fall under a habit? We all do it, right? It's a very, very easy place to go, you know. And sometimes it even becomes, you know, we don't even think about it. We just do it. It just almost becomes habitual. You just do it all the time because you always just do that. But Paul is saying, I can do anything I want to. But not all things are helpful. Not all things bring betterment to my life. But even worse, not all things bring freedom. He said, I will not be mastered by any. I can do whatever I want, but I'm not going to be mastered by it. It's not going to have rule and control over me because that is not helpful. It is not beneficial because what we have to understand, friends, is our true freedom comes through Christ. Okay? He said, you will know the truth, and that is so important. And this has really been heavy on my heart this past week. He said, you will know the truth, not a truth, the truth. And that truth will make you what? Free. Okay, so he's speaking here in this particular way. He's speaking of himself. The value of that relationship is immeasurable. He's saying, you will know me, and I will set you free. I will open the doors. You know, we sometimes even sing, you know, open the eyes of my heart. Set me free. Show me what it is that I need to see, what it is that I need to follow. Because if we're going to be a representative of Him, if we're going to show Him to others, then indeed it is important that we realize that while we can do anything we want, not all things are beneficial. Not all things are helpful. Not all things create freedom. Not all things cause us to be able to show the cause of Christ. So Paul here is speaking of drawing the line on anything that steals our freedom. anything that steals our joy, anything that enslaves or captures us. But wait a minute, I can do anything I want to, right? Yeah, you can. Anything that you want to. But does it help you? Does it create a stronger walk with the Lord? Does it keep you free, or does it keep you captive? You see, free could be not being held down. Freedom can be having the ability to do more. Okay, so we can look at freedom in multiple different ways. Not being free could mean jail. Not being free could be some type of physical bondage, some type of way of being held down or whatever. But it could also mean addiction. Isn't that true? Many have battled that. Many still battle it today. I can take this, I can drink this, I can watch this, but does it cause my ability to get weaker and weaker when it comes to the ability to put it down? Because has it got me, or do I have it? You know, it's something we have to think about. Because if it's mastering me, Paul is saying I can do anything I want to, but if it's going to control me, it's got to go. Does that make sense? It could be anything. There's no one singular category that it falls into. He's saying, yes, you can do anything, but are you better because of it? Have you benefited from it? Are you still free, or has it become your master? And this could be a multitude of categories. As followers of Christ, this is what I want us to understand. There is only room for one master. Do we believe that today? There's only room for one. There's only room for one. And that is Christ himself. And no one or nothing should ever occupy that seat in our life. In Scripture it says that Christ should have preeminence. Okay, that's a fancy word for saying he should be number one. That's what it means. He's saying very, very clearly, no one should occupy that place. And Paul is saying, while I can do anything I want to, I can do anything I want to. I can go here, I can go there, I can eat this, drink this, look at this. I can do anything I want to. But is it helpful? Does it make my life better? And has it impacted my freedom? Is it causing me to have a different master? Because sometimes it does. Sometimes I got to have it. I can't live without it. I can't do this. I can't do that. And again, we're not talking about one category of things. It could be anything. It could even be following another person. There's some people that can't walk and talk if somebody else don't tell them to do it. You know, he's saying no one, no thing, nothing should have that place of occupancy in our life but Christ himself. 1955, an old man named Mosey Lister wrote these words. I love, it's just an old song about the master. I love what it says. It says this: like a babe when it cries for its mother, like a child I was helpless alone, then I met the master. Now I am one of his own. For all things were changed when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. Now I met the master, and I belong to him. Like a blind man that walks in the darkness, I had longed, I had searched for the light. Then I met the master. Now I walk no more in the night, for all things were changed when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. Now I met the master, and I belong to him. I like those words. I like those. Because, see, friends, That's the answer. You know, when we think about new year, new this, new that, are we walking with the Lord? Are we, and I said this on Wednesday night, and I want to encourage all that we're having a great time here on Wednesday night. If you want to come, I'd love for you to be a part of our study on that, our study on Sunday mornings, all the things. But Wednesday night I asked this question. I said, are you living life or watching it? That's two very, very different things. This is what God is saying. You can do anything you want to do, but is it making your life better? You can do anything you want to do, but is it keeping you free? Or is it running the show? Because that is a massive difference. Not all things bring freedom. Can we agree to that today? Some people feel that they're just captive in wherever it is that they're at. It could be work, it could be a relationship, again, it could be an addiction, it could be all things. What masters your life? And even greater, who is the master of your life? Because see, friends, He will give us everything we need to do to make it. He will give us everything to survive it if we will just trust Him. That's really what it comes down to. If we will trust Him, He said, I will give you everything that you need. If we will trust Him and give Him, as He said, I want you to love me with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. But this requires faith, which requires surrender. And we struggle with that. Because, why? I want to be in charge because I can do anything I want to. And Paul is saying, yeah, you can. I'm not arguing with you on that. All I'm asking you to do is look at the consideration. You can do whatever you want to do, but is it making your life better? Can you answer that question in a positive way? Is it keeping you free, or is it running you? Because that's a big question. Paul says on our, well, there goes those glasses. Paul says on our line drawing, it should absolutely include anything that hinders our freedom. Anything that gets in the way of that. If we turn to chapter 10 in the verse that we read in our scripture reading earlier, in verse 23, we find a similar text, but we see the additional line. It says here in verse 23, it says everything is permissible. Okay? So that's repeating what we see in chapter 6. He says everything is permissible, but not all things are beneficial. So we see the same thing. All right, so once we grab the fact that when things are repeated in the Bible, God's trying to get us to hear something. Okay, He's saying you can do whatever you want to do. I've given you the freedom of that. You have free will. You can say yes, you can say no, whatever. But what I want you to consider, what I want you to think of is, does it make your life better? That's all I'm asking you to do. Is it beneficial? Are you benefiting from that? Are you getting something from that? And then Paul adds a second part on this passage from chapter 10. He says everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. We live in a time, we see in a society to where, especially from the onslaught on whatever, of social media, people tear each other down with words, with gossip, with rumors, with innuendos. We see it all, right? It happens all the time. That's the society that we live in. Paul is saying, you can do that. You can do that. You can say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But does it build up? It goes back to being beneficial. That goes back to, does it create freedom? It goes back to, is it a help to others? When we see the beauty of this, everything is permissible. I can do whatever I want, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. Other versions use the word edify. In other words, encouraging one another, building one another up, helping somebody. There's an old song, and there's a line in that song that says, if I can help somebody, then my living was not in vain. Think about that. If I can help somebody, then my living was not in vain. I can do anything. I can do anything. But does it benefit me? Does it enslave me? Does it help or does it hurt others? These are things that we have to be thinking of as we're walking into the new year as representatives of Christ. as representatives of a body of believers, as representatives of the Lord himself, as we're walking into our communities, our places of work, our schools, wherever we are, any public place, or even in our home, to our children, to our spouses, to our parents, wherever. These are kind of the measuring sticks. What is going on? Now, this is a serious pause moment, or it should be. Because what Paul is saying here is not everything builds up. Wait a minute. This is not just about me. But rather what this is speaking to directly is my witness. Do others see Jesus in me? In my words? In my actions? Do they hear him in my voice? See, this is a personal reflection moment. I have the freedom, and this is what Paul wants us to see here. I have the freedom to do anything I want to do. God created me as a free spirit. I can do whatever I want to do. I can talk however I want to talk. I can think however I want to think. I can kick. I can stomp. I can lay on the floor. I can do whatever I want to do. But do I honor that freedom, or do I abuse it? We cherish, and I'm getting ready to go off in the weeds here for a second, so hold on to your seat. We cherish and we laud the free speech that we have in our nation. We do. And it's a wonderful thing, no question about it. It is a principled right. People have lived and died and fought for us to be able to do that, right? No one can tell me what to say. No one can tell me what to do, all this other stuff. Everything is permissible. But is everything beneficial? My point. We, and I speak to the believer today, just as Paul is speaking to the believer here. We can absolutely dislike leadership. We can dislike politicians. We can dislike their policies, their type of authority, their oppression or hurting of others. We can absolutely despise those things and even the actions that harm others. But let me ask you this. Paul says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything brings freedom. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. Do we, as those who represent Christ, should we display on our homes, on our cars, on our person, signs, flags, stickers that say F so-and-so? I don't think that we should. We may not like that person. We may not care for that person or what they do. But friends, that is well, Pastor, that's my right. I get to do that. All things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. We represent the King. We represent the Master. Does that show him? Does it? We don't have to like what that person does, whoever they are. And I'm not siding on any side. Is it beneficial to the cause of Christ, or does it hurt or hinder our witness? You know? You used to see all the time, you don't see bumper stickers as much now as you did back in the day, but it's kind of like there used to be kind of an old funny story about the guy that had the honk if you love Jesus sticker on the back of his car. But as everybody was doing that, they weren't getting a witness in return. They were getting the finger, and it's like, well, wait a minute, you said, well, you can do whatever you want to do. Paul says it's absolutely permissible. But is it beneficial? As we represent the Lord, as we think about what we're saying and doing, does it cause a benefit? Does it cause a hindrance to my freedom because of the anger and the displeasure I have allowed it to enslave my heart, and I can no longer think clearly? How many people fall in that category? How many people have we seen that have fallen into such bitterness and anger about whatever, They can't think clearly anymore. They're bound by that. They have not become free anymore. They're bound by that place. And therefore they can't see the betterment of that. They can't see that their witness of Christ is being impeded by that very thing that are allowing to enslave them. Paul is saying, you can do that, but it's not good for you. And it's not good for the cause of Christ. How do we embrace new? Where do we draw the line? Does it lift anybody up? Does what we say or do lift anybody up? Does it give a clear vision of Christ and His availability? This is all Paul is trying to teach. He's not trying to beat anybody up. He's not trying to make anybody feel guilty. He's trying to cause us to stop and think for just a moment, because he is absolutely clearly speaking to the believer. Okay? He's speaking to the believer. He's simply saying, as you walk with the Lord, as you walk in the Lord, consider these three things. What helps? What helps? What keeps me free? And what builds up? That's all he's saying, is look at this as your measuring stick. In other words, mirror this against what you're doing and see if there's a match. You know, when we're standing in front of the mirror, if you're wearing a blue jacket, you ought to see a blue jacket. You know, it should match. If our life and what we're living as for Christ, if our witness and what we're living as for Christ, do we see that? Does it match up? But I can do whatever I want to, Pastor. Yes, you can, but is it beneficial? I can do whatever I want to, but is it causing you freedom or captivity? I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. That's true. But is it building up? Because that was the measure of Christ. It's not that we can't find an area to work on, because indeed that's what the mirror's for, right? It allows us to see where there's a flaw. Allows us to see where there's a need or where there's something missing. It gives us the clarity of that. When we think of the word, I can do anything, everything is permissible. Everything is a big word. Everything is a big, big word. It's kind of like the word all. It's very inclusive. It's everything. You can have everything. You can do it all. But what we have to understand is, with such an offer, with such a clarity, it comes with a great responsibility, right? And as we're thinking about that, as believers of Christ, as followers of Christ, as witnesses to the local church, into our community, we have a phenomenal responsibility. And so as we look at discovering the new of the new year, may we consider if there's any lines that need to be drawn. That's a personal reflection. Again, that's not anything but I'm talking to me as much as I am anybody else. Is there anywhere that needs to be worked on a little bit? May we consider that. Again, this is a time of personal reflection. And times of personal reflection are often a good thing. You know, we need to look sometimes in the mirror. Sometimes we need to stop for a moment and say, where am I at? What am I doing? Because I don't know about you, friends, but every now and then, we need a tune-up. You know, every now and then, we just need to get things a little bit better. You know, if you play an instrument, every now and then it's out of tune. You gotta tighten this string up. You know, if you drive your car long enough, every now and then, you got to get some new spark plugs or new oil or whatever. Everybody needs a tune-up every now and then, and that's all Paul is saying here. Be mindful. Don't forget. You can do it all. You can do anything you want, but... And that but is not to create guilt. That but is not to create anything but reflection. Yeah, you know what? I probably could have been nicer to my neighbor. Or I could have done this, or I could have done that. That's all he's saying. That simple little formula. It gives us a place to look at and compare. It's very much like the literal mirror test. I mean, it really, really is. I mean, we stand there, and we're you know, just being serious here. We stand there, and we can see it all, whatever's there, the good, the bad, and any ugly that may be there, right? You know, and we can see that. But once we find the area, if we're peering in the mirror, depending on our state of dress or whatever, doesn't matter. Once we find the area that needs improvement, we've got two choices. Fix it, or pass the donuts. I mean, that's kind of it. There's really no in between. What are we going to do? We're just going to settle for it and just say, it doesn't matter, I'm going to keep doing it, or I'm going to do something about it. Where do I draw the line? And here's the question: against anything that harms my witness. Because as we're going into this new year, as we're beginning to develop what I believe that God is laying out before us is a very, very clear vision of let's go to work, let's get busy, let's go. We have to look at that question. Is there anything that harms my witness? Where do I draw the line against anything that steals my freedom or my joy? Where do I draw the line against anything that harms others rather than helps them? See, as we consider new, may we look at drawing lines. May we be willing, friends, to put the pencil on the paper, or the finger in the sand, or whatever the need is. And let's walk into 24 seeking Jesus. Let's walk into 24 staying free. And let's walk into 24 building each other up. Amen? Amen.